You were told to give up ice cream the day you heard the words kidney disease. It seemed like the safe thing to do, so you reached for what felt safer. Plant-based, sugar-free, dairy-free labels, but it was not ice cream that was the problem. It was four letters hiding on the ingredient list, and some of those safer replacements carry them too. A research team at Harbor U CLA Medical Center, led by Dr. Kamyar Kalantarzadeh, published a finding in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology that changed how renal dietitians think about phosphorus. Phosphate additives, the kind hidden in processed foods as stabilizers, are absorbed by the human gut at roughly 90 to 100%. Natural phosphorus in whole food, 40 to 60%. That single gap changes which ice cream is safe and which one is not. If you are new here, this is where we break down what to eat at every stage of kidney disease. Real research, not a one-size-fits-all list. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. And before we go further, how many months has it been since you had ice cream with your grandkids without guilt? Drop the number in the comments. I want to know. So here's the answer. Up front, no waiting. The four letters are PHOS. Anywhere that combination appears on an ingredient list, phosphoric acid, sodium phosphate, disodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, that product contains inorganic phosphate additives. And those additives are absorbed almost entirely by your gut. A half cup of plain vanilla ice cream made with simple ingredients, cream, milk, sugar, vanilla, contains about 70 milligrams of phosphorus. Your body absorbs roughly 40 to 60% of that. Call it 30 to 40 milligrams reaching your blood. Now take the same half cup from a budget brand that lists disodium phosphate on the label. The nutrition panel might print a similar number, but your body absorbs nearly all of the additive phosphorus. The effective dose to your kidneys can double from the same scoop, the same size, the same price. That is the headline. For perspective, that half cup of additive-free vanilla has less absorbable phosphorus reaching your blood than a single ounce of processed cheese. The cheese is probably still in your refrigerator, but which specific brands pass, which ones fail, and whether your stage even requires this level of caution, that depends on something your last grocery trip probably skipped entirely. Here is where it splits. If you have been avoiding all ice cream since your diagnosis, cutting it out entirely because someone told you dairy is off the table, you may be restricting something you did not need to restrict. At your stage, a half cup of the right ice cream may fit into your daily phosphorus budget without a problem. You gave up something you love for no documented reason. But if you have been eating whatever brand catches your eye, assuming a small portion is harmless, you may be absorbing twice the phosphorus you think you are. Because no one taught you to read past the nutrition facts panel and into the ingredient list. That is where the additives hide. You are in one of those two situations right now. And the only way to know which one is yours is to understand what your stage demands and what those four letters actually cost your kidneys. By the end of this hour, you will know three things. First, which ice creams pass the ingredient test and which ones fail, by name with the numbers next to each one. Not a vague list, something you can carry into the freezer aisle and use tonight. Second, why phosphorus behaves differently depending on where it comes from and what that difference is doing to your bones and your arteries at your stage. The mechanism a 10-minute appointment never has time to explain. Third, the exact sentence to say at your next appointment that gets your phosphorus status documented in your chart, so the conversation does not reset to zero every visit. If you have your last lab results nearby, grab them. If not, picture the number your doctor read out. That number is your starting point for everything that comes next. And pay attention to the last brand on the recommended list. It is a full-fat dairy ice cream, the exact thing you were told to give up. Stay through the warning list. The most dangerous category is the one wearing the label you trust most. You know the room. A dietitian's office near the Villages, fluorescent lights, a blood pressure cuff on the wall, the faint smell of hand sanitizer. You are in the chair. A printed sheet of paper sits on the desk between you. It has two columns, foods you can eat and foods you need to limit. Ice cream is circled on the wrong side. She looks up from the sheet and says, "At your stage, dairy is something we want to pull back on. Ice cream, cheese, regular milk." And you nod. Because what are you going to say? Can you be more specific about which exact ice cream? You do not have the language for that question yet. You do not even know there is a question to ask. So you drive home on Route 41. And that evening, when your daughter brings the grandkids over and everyone piles into the kitchen scooping mint chocolate chip, you pour yourself a glass of water. You sit at the table and tell them you are fine. You just do not feel like ice cream tonight. You did that for 6 months, maybe longer. And every single time you thought you were protecting your kidneys. You were not protecting anything. You were following a rule that never had enough detail to be useful. By the end of this hour, you will have the words. So which of those two situations is yours depends on which of three types you are right now. The first type got the CKD diagnosis recently. Maybe stage 3A, maybe 3B, and has been Googling food lists at midnight ever since. You found 100 things that say dairy is bad for kidneys. You found almost nothing explaining why some dairy is worse than other dairy or what your stage actually requires. You cut out ice cream, cheese, and milk, and you are not entirely sure you needed to cut any of them. That confusion is not laziness. It is a gap in the information you were given. By the end of segment 2, you will know exactly which number decides whether ice cream fits your day and what to look for on the label before you pick up any brand. The second type has been managing CKD for a year or more, following the diet, taking the medications, doing what was asked, and the phosphorus is still creeping. You are frustrated because you already gave up the foods you were told to give up, and the number is not cooperating. Here is what almost no one has explained to you. The phosphorus on the nutrition label is not the phosphorus your body absorbs. The source matters as much as the amount. By segment 3, you will understand why the standard food list did not account for this way and what to do about it. The third type is not scared. You are curious. Your numbers are stable, your doctor is satisfied, and you are here because you want to understand the mechanism. You have heard phosphorus matters, but nobody has walked you through exactly what it does to your arteries and your bones when the kidneys cannot clear it. By segment 2, you will have the mechanism in plain language, and one refinement to your grocery routine that even a well-controlled plan probably has not addressed. No matter which of the three you are, the mechanism underneath is the same, and it starts with something sitting in your freezer right now, ice cream. The food you were told to avoid or the food you assumed was fine because the serving was small. Here is what the research actually says. Dr. Kalantar Zaid's team at the Los Angeles Biomedical Research Institute, affiliated with Harbor UCLA Medical Center, published their analysis in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology in March of 2010. The paper examined where dietary phosphorus actually comes from, how each source is absorbed, and what that means for someone whose kidneys cannot clear the excess the way they used to. The central finding is this: phosphorus is not one thing. It arrives in your gut from 3 different sources, and each source is absorbed at a completely different rate. The first source is natural phosphorus in animal-based whole food, the phosphorus in milk, cream, eggs, meat. This phosphorus is bound inside organic molecules. Your gut absorbs roughly 40 to 60% of it. The rest passes through and leaves the body. The second source is phosphorus in plant-based food, beans, seeds, whole grains, where it is locked inside a compound called phytate. Humans do not make the enzyme needed to fully break phytate open, so your body absorbs less than 40%. The third source is inorganic phosphate, the kind added to processed food as a stabilizer, emulsifier, or preservative. These are loose phosphate salts. They dissolve easily. They cross the gut wall with almost no resistance. That phosphorus is absorbed at 90 to 100%. Nearly all of it reaches your blood. That third number is the one that changes everything about your freezer aisle, because when you pick up a pint of ice cream at the store, the nutrition facts panel might say 100 milligrams of phosphorus per serving, but that number cannot tell you where the phosphorus came from. It cannot tell you whether it came from the cream and milk in the recipe, in which case your body absorbs roughly half, or from a phosphate additive listed 7 lines deep in the ingredient list, in which case your body absorbs nearly all of it. Same number on the label. Twice the effective dose in your blood. The label does not distinguish. Your kidneys do. This is not an old finding that went nowhere. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in March of 2025, conducted by researchers at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, examined ingredient data across products from the top 25 food manufacturers in the United States. They found phosphate additives present across every category of packaged food and beverage, widespread, largely invisible on nutrition panels, and not required by the FDA to be listed as a quantity. 15 years after the Kalantarzadeh paper, phosphorus still does not have a mandatory line on the United States Nutrition Facts label. And an earlier study from a research group in Cleveland, published in Kidney Research and Clinical Practice, found that 44% of the top-selling grocery items in their sample contained phosphate additives. The category with the highest rate was prepared frozen foods, including frozen desserts, at 72%. Products with additives averaged 67 milligrams more phosphorus per 100 grams than matched products without them. Over a full day of eating, additive-containing foods added an extra 736 milligrams of phosphorus compared to additive-free alternatives. For context, the common dietary target for someone with advancing CKD is roughly 800 to 1,000 milligrams per day. That means the additives alone, in foods that look identical on the nutrition panel, can eat up nearly an entire day's phosphorus budget. And the viewer never saw the number because it was never printed. Now, here is where this applies to your ice cream, specifically. According to USDA data, a standard half cup of vanilla ice cream made from simple ingredients, cream, skim milk, sugar, vanilla, contains about 69 to 73 milligrams of phosphorus, roughly 131 milligrams of potassium, about 53 milligrams of sodium, and around 2.3 grams of protein. At early stage 3A with normal labs, that half cup fits within your daily phosphorus budget. It is not a high phosphorus food. It is a moderate one. That is the part the generic food lists leave out. They circle the word dairy and move on. They do not tell you that a half cup of plain vanilla ice cream has less phosphorus than a single ounce of cheddar cheese. But the same half cup from a budget or store brand, one that lists sodium phosphate, disodium phosphate, or calcium phosphate somewhere in the ingredient panel, delivers that phosphorus in a form your body absorbs almost entirely. The number on the nutrition facts panel may look similar to the premium brand. The effective mineral load reaching your blood is not. Now the potassium side, because phosphorus is not the only mineral that matters here. Vanilla ice cream sits at roughly 131 milligrams of potassium per half cup. Strawberry is close, around 125 to 130, but chocolate is meaningfully higher, 165 to 174 milligrams. That is a 25 to 33% jump, and it comes almost entirely from the cocoa powder mixed into the base. Cocoa is a concentrated source of potassium, and nut-based flavors, peanut butter swirl, praline pecan, anything with almonds or cashew pieces mixed in, push both potassium and phosphorus higher still. If your stage or your medications, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, finerenone, potassium-sparing diuretics, require you to watch potassium, the flavor you choose matters as much as the brand you pick. So here are the 3 categories of ice cream that someone managing kidney disease at stage 3 or beyond should not buy. The first, and this is the most important one, is any ice cream that contains phosphate additives on the ingredient list. Not the nutrition panel. The ingredient list. Turn the container around and look for anything with the letters PHOS, phosphoric acid, sodium phosphate, disodium phosphate, monocalcium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, sodium hexametaphosphate. If any of those words appear that ice cream delivers phosphorus, your body absorbs almost completely, at roughly 90 to 100%. This is the single most impactful filter you can apply. It does not matter whether the brand is expensive or cheap, organic or conventional, dairy or plant-based. It does not matter whether the front of the label says natural or simple. Turn it around. Read the ingredients. Look for those 4 letters. The second category is chocolate-flavored ice cream from any brand. Cocoa powder is a concentrated source of potassium, and a half cup of chocolate ice cream carries 25 to 33% more potassium than the same half cup of vanilla. If your blood potassium is already elevated or trending upward, or if you are on a medication that raises potassium, which includes most of the kidney protective drugs your doctor may have prescribed, chocolate ice cream is not your safest choice. Vanilla, strawberry, and fruit-based flavors are the lower potassium alternatives. This does not mean chocolate is forbidden in every case. It means that if potassium is something your team is watching, the flavor selection is a decision, not a default. The third category is any ice cream loaded with nuts, nut butter, or nut pieces, particularly in full-size tub servings where portion control is up to you. Peanut butter, almonds, pecans, and cashews are all significant sources of both potassium and phosphorus. A peanut butter swirl ice cream from a standard dairy brand can push well over 200 milligrams of potassium per half cup and raise the phosphorus meaningfully above the plain vanilla baseline. The combination of two controlled minerals in a single serving in a format that makes it easy to overserve is what makes this category a problem for someone managing kidney numbers. Those are the three to put back on the shelf. One more thing on the stage question because this matters. If you are at early stage 3A and your last labs showed your phosphorus and potassium are in normal range, you have more room than you might think. A half cup of simple ingredient vanilla ice cream 2 or 3 times a week is not a significant phosphorus event in a day that totals under 1,000 milligrams. The issue is when the additives turn a moderate food into a high absorption one without your knowledge. At stage 3B and beyond, the restrictions tighten. Your team may have added a phosphorus binder to your regimen, and at that point, every source counts. Either way, the skill is the same. Read for PHOS. The threshold at which it matters is your team's call. The habit of checking is yours. This is not a prescription. Your exact limits, how much potassium, how much phosphorus, how much protein, how much sodium, depend on your stage, your latest labs, and your current medications. If you take an ACE inhibitor, an ARB, or finerenone, your potassium tolerance is already reduced. Flag that with your kidney team before you add new foods. Before you change what you are eating based on anything in this hour, bring it to your kidney doctor or your dietitian. The goal is a better grocery trip, not a self-made diet plan. The question in your head right now is probably how this actually works inside your kidneys. Why does additive phosphorus matter more? What does phosphorus do when it builds up? And why does the damage show up in your arteries and your bones instead of your kidneys? The answer is a mechanism standard diet advice almost never explains. And once you see it, you will understand why reading 4 letters on a label is the single most protective grocery habit you can build. Here is what happens when your kidneys start losing their ability to clear phosphorus. Picture the plumbing in an old house. The pipes work fine for decades. But as they age, mineral scale builds up along the inside walls, slowly, layer by layer, so gradually that you never notice. The water still flows, but the pipes are getting narrower and stiffer with every year. Eventually, the scale is thick enough that the system starts failing, not because anything broke, but because the buildup choked it. That is what phosphorus does to your blood vessels when your kidneys can no longer clear it at the rate it arrives. The mechanism works in steps, and each step matters because each step is where a different kind of damage begins. Step 1. Your kidneys are the primary route for clearing phosphate from your blood. In a healthy kidney, this works seamlessly. You eat phosphorus, your gut absorbs some of it, your kidneys filter the excess out into urine, and your blood phosphorus stays in a safe range. When your kidney function falls, and by stage 3 it has fallen to somewhere between 30 and 59% of normal filtering capacity, that clearance slows down. Phosphate starts accumulating in the blood, even if the number on your routine lab still looks normal. The body does not wait for the lab to change, it starts compensating. And that compensation is where the real damage begins. Step 2. As phosphate rises, sometimes before it shows on a standard blood test, your body raises 2 hormones to try to manage the problem. The first is called FGF23, fibroblast growth factor 23. Think of FGF23 as an emergency alarm signal that your bones send to your kidneys, telling them to dump more phosphate. In early stages of kidney disease, this works. The remaining kidney function responds and clears the extra phosphate. But the alarm is already ringing louder than it should be in a healthy system. The effort required to maintain normal phosphorus is increasing, even if the number on the lab printout has not moved yet. The second hormone is parathyroid hormone, PTH. PTH does something specific and measurably damaging. When blood phosphate stays elevated, PTH rises and begins pulling calcium out of your bones to try to rebalance the mineral ratio in your blood. Your bones get weaker. The calcium that was pulled out has to go somewhere. And where it goes is the third step. Step 3. The freed calcium combines with the excess phosphate circulating in your bloodstream, and that calcium phosphate compound deposits itself inside the walls of your blood vessels. That is vascular calcification. It is the arterial equivalent of scale building inside old pipes. Your arteries stiffen, lose their flexibility, and become resistant to normal blood flow. Over time, the buildup narrows the vessels and raises the workload on your heart. This is not a theoretical risk. This is the mechanism behind the cardiovascular disease that kidney patients die from far more often than they die from kidney failure itself. The kidneys are where the problem starts. The arteries are where the consequence lands. So when you eat ice cream loaded with phosphate additives, the kind absorbed at 90 to 100% DARS, you are sending a concentrated phosphorus load directly into a system that is already struggling to clear it. The additives skip the natural absorption limit that whole food phosphorus hits. Your kidneys receive the full dose. The FGF23 alarm gets louder. The PTH pulls more calcium from your bones. The calcium phosphate compound adds another thin layer of scale to your arterial walls. And none of this produces a symptom you would notice sitting at your kitchen table. You do not feel phosphorus building up. You do not feel calcium leaving your bones. You do not feel scale forming in your arteries. The labs might still look acceptable. The damage is accumulating silently, the way mineral scale builds inside plumbing for years before the water pressure drops. Now, why does understanding this mechanism change the way you pick ice cream? Because the label reading skill is not an arbitrary rule. It is the direct consequence of this mechanism. A half cup of simple ingredient vanilla ice cream, cream, milk, sugar, vanilla, a plant-based stabilizer like guar gum, delivers about 70 milligrams of phosphorus. Your body absorbs 40 to 60% of that. Call it 30 to 40 milligrams of effective phosphorus reaching your blood. Your kidneys at stage 3 can handle that in the context of a carefully managed day. But a half cup from a brand that uses disodium phosphate as a stabilizer might list a similar total on the nutrition panel, and your body absorbs nearly all of the additive phosphorus. 60 to 70 milligrams of effective phosphorus from the same serving size. The difference between those two scoops is not visible on the front of the container. It is not visible on the nutrition facts panel. It is visible only on the ingredient list. That is also why the plant-based options matter, and why each one deserves a closer look rather than a blanket recommendation. A product like Oatly's vanilla frozen dessert is made from an oat base, water and oats, combined with coconut oil, sugar, and simple stabilizers, locust bean gum, guar gum, sea salt, vanilla seeds. No phosphate additives anywhere in the list. No dairy phosphorus at all. The sodium is about 40 milligrams per 2/3 cup serving. The potassium registers at essentially 0% of daily value. The protein is roughly 1 gram. For someone actively managing phosphorus and potassium at stage 3 and beyond, that nutrient profile is genuinely favorable compared to any dairy-based ice cream on the market. But here is a detail that catches people off guard, and it is worth pausing on. Oatly's frozen dessert has no phosphate additives. Oatly's oat milk, the drink you pour in your coffee, does. Read the ingredient list on the carton of Oatly oat milk and you will find dipotassium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, and dicalcium phosphate. 3 phosphate additives in the milk. 0 in the frozen dessert. Same brand name on the front. Same company. Completely different ingredient list on the back. You cannot assume one product's ingredients match another from the same manufacturer. This is the reason the label reading habit is not excessive caution. It is a survival skill for managing phosphorus in a food system that does not label the number. Halo Top's dairy-free line uses a coconut cream base mixed with water instead of cow's milk, which eliminates the dairy origin phosphorus entirely. The calorie count per pint is lower than most competitors, which can matter if weight management is part of your health picture. The sodium is higher than Oatly, roughly 110 to 150 milligrams per serving, depending on the specific flavor. So if your kidney team has asked you to stay under 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day, that number needs to be factored into your daily total. Check the ingredient list for PHOS on every flavor. The chocolate and cookie-based flavors are more likely to carry additives than the simpler fruit and vanilla options. Keto is an interesting case. The base is avocado puree, low protein, no dairy, plant-based. But avocado is a high potassium fruit. The National Kidney Foundation notes that 1/3 of an avocado contains about 250 milligrams of potassium. In a keto frozen dessert, the potassium per serving can range from roughly 50 milligrams in a lighter flavor to 200 milligrams in a richer one. If your blood potassium is in range and your medications do not include a potassium-raising drug, certain keto flavors may fit your plan. But if potassium is something your team is actively monitoring, or if you are on an ACE inhibitor, ARB, or finerenone, this one requires a label check every time and a conversation with your dietitian before you make it a regular choice. The frozen bar options, Good Pop's dairy-free oat milk bars, so delicious cashew milk bars and similar pre-portioned formats, carry one structural advantage that has nothing to do with their ingredients. They are portion-controlled by design. You eat one bar. You do not scoop from a tub. You do not estimate a half cup and end up with a cup and a half. For context, research on actual ice cream consumption consistently shows the average person serves themselves 1 to 1.5 cups from a tub, 2 to 3 times the labeled half-cup serving. At a full cup, the phosphorus and potassium both double. At a cup and a half, you are approaching a share of your daily phosphorus limit that your kidneys will notice. A single frozen bar removes that variable from the equation. The ingredients still need to pass the PHOS test. If the bar contains chocolate coating or nut pieces, the potassium needs to be weighed. But the built-in portion control is a genuinely underrated advantage for someone tracking minerals. Turkey Hill. Simply, natural vanilla is the dairy option on this list, and it is here for a reason. It is made with a short, simple ingredient list: milk, cream, sugar, vanilla extract, and a stabilizer blend. No phosphate additives, no artificial anything. That is the kind of premium, clean-label dairy ice cream that delivers only the natural, organically bound phosphorus your body partially absorbs, at 40 to 60%, not 90 to 100. It proves the central point of this entire hour. The issue was never dairy itself. The issue was what got added to the dairy during commercial processing. A person managing CKD at stage 3A with normal phosphorus labs can include a half cup of Turkey Hill, simply natural vanilla in their week without exceeding any reasonable threshold, because the phosphorus it contains is the kind your body handles at a manageable rate. Now, sit back for a moment, close your eyes, picture your freezer at home. What is in there right now? If you have a carton, picture the brand. When you open your eyes, you are going to walk to your freezer, pull that carton out, and turn it around. You are not looking at the nutrition facts panel. You are reading the ingredient list. You are looking for 4 letters, PHOS. If they are not there, put it back. If they are, that carton goes on the list to replace. That is the first action. If this reframed something your doctor never explained, hit the like button. That is how people in the same situation find this channel. You are probably asking yourself a question right now. If this distinction between additive phosphorus and natural phosphorus has been documented since 2010, if the research team at Harbor UCLA laid it out in one of nephrology's most cited journals, if a 2025 study confirmed the problem is still widespread across every category of packaged food in the United States, why has your own kidney doctor never walked you through this? Why did the dietitian circle dairy on a sheet of paper and move on? Why has nobody handed you the 4 letters and told you what to look for? The answer is not that your doctor does not care. The answer is not that your dietitian is poorly trained. And it is not that someone is hiding information from you. The answer is structural, and once you see the structure, you will stop being frustrated and start being precise. Here is what happens inside a nephrology practice. Your nephrologist manages a full panel of patients, many of whom are further along than you. Stage 4, stage 5, patients approaching or already on dialysis, who need urgent medication adjustments, patients with acute electrolyte emergencies, patients whose lab results changed overnight. The average nephrology visit lasts 10 to 15 minutes. In that window, your doctor is reviewing your eGFR trend, checking your creatinine, adjusting blood pressure medications, reviewing your potassium and phosphorus labs, assessing whether you have swelling or fluid issues, and documenting everything for the electronic record. The dietary counseling portion of that visit, if it happens at all, is compressed into a sentence or two. Limit dairy. Watch your potassium, cut back on salt. Those are pattern shortcuts. They are efficient summaries of real nutritional principles. They are not wrong, they are incomplete. And the referral to a renal dietitian, the person who would have the time to walk you through ingredient lists, is not always automatic. In many practices, the dietitian referral happens at stage 4 or when labs cross a clinical threshold. A patient at stage 3A with normal phosphorus might not see a renal dietitian at all unless they specifically ask. And even when the referral happens, the dietitian is working with the same labeling system as everyone else, a system that does not put phosphorus on the nutrition facts panel. Now look at the research timeline. Dr. Kalantarzade's paper was published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology in March of 2010. It established, in clear terms, that the source and form of dietary phosphorus matters as much as the amount, that additive phosphorus at 90 to 100% absorption is a fundamentally different load than natural phosphorus at 40 to 60%. That finding was over 15 years ago. The most recent edition of the KDIGO Clinical Practice Guideline for CKD, published in 2024, addresses phosphorus management and recommends limiting phosphorus intake in patients with elevated levels. But the guideline does not hand your nephrologist a brand-by-brand ice cream comparison or a practical protocol for reading ingredient lists at the grocery store. It operates at the level of clinical principles, not consumer application. And the United States FDA, as of today, still does not require phosphorus to appear as a quantified number on the nutrition facts label. The ingredient list is the only place the additives are visible. The ingredient list does not tell you how many milligrams. It does not tell you what percentage is absorbed. It just lists the compound name, sodium phosphate, disodium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, buried among 20 other ingredients in a font size designed for reading glasses. A patient who does not know to look for the letters PHOS will walk past it every time. So your nephrologist is working with a guideline that says, manage phosphorus, a nutrition label that does not quantify phosphorus, a 15-minute appointment that cannot accommodate a grocery store tutorial, and a referral pathway to a dietitian that may not trigger until your labs cross a threshold. That is not negligence. That is a system running on a lag. The research exists. The translation of that research into actionable, stage-specific guidance that a 65-year-old with stage 3 BCKD can use at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, that translation has not arrived in the exam room yet. It is sitting in a nephrology journal. It is sitting in this video. It is not sitting on the printout your dietitian handed you. The reason this matters to you specifically is that the gap between what the research says and what your appointment can cover is the space where phosphorus damage accumulates. Your doctor is not going to tell you that Oatly's frozen dessert has no phosphate additives, but Oatly's oat milk has 3. Your doctor is not going to walk you through the difference between a half cup of Turkey Hill, simply natural vanilla, and a half cup of a store-brand vanilla with disodium phosphate on the label. Not because they do not want to, because they do not have the time, the data is not on the label in a usable form, and the clinical guidelines have not specified the advice at that level of consumer detail. The only way that information gets into the room and into your chart before the guidelines catch up is if someone brings it. The someone is you. You are not replacing your nephrologist. You are not diagnosing yourself. You are arriving at your next appointment with a specific question, a specific skill, and a specific request. And that is exactly what the next section hands you. Now you understand why the pattern shortcut left a gap. The question is what you do with it. And the answer is a very specific conversation that starts with one sentence. Here is the setup. Your next nephrology appointment is on the calendar. You walk in, you sit down. You have your last lab results either in hand or accessible in the patient portal. You have your current medication list, the names, the doses, whether you have been taking them as prescribed. And you have something else, something you did not have before today. You have a question your doctor has probably never been asked by a patient in exactly this form. And you have a request that turns a conversation into a documented record. The sentence is this: I've been reading about the difference between phosphate additives and natural phosphorus in food. Would you be comfortable noting in my chart that I asked about this and whether the ice cream brands I've been choosing are appropriate for my stage and my current phosphorus levels? That sentence does 4 things at once, and each one matters. First, it tells your doctor you have done your homework without claiming to be an expert. I've been reading about is a signal of informed interest, not a confrontation. It says, I am engaged in my own care, and I would like your clinical perspective. Second, it names the specific distinction, additive versus natural phosphorus, which immediately tells the doctor this is not a generic what can I eat question. It is a question about bioavailability. That distinction lifts the conversation out of pattern shortcut territory and into a space where your doctor's expertise is genuinely useful. Third, it asks for a chart note. This is the most important structural element. A question that is documented in your medical chart travels with you. It shows up the next time anyone opens your file, your nephrologist, your primary care doctor, a covering physician, a renal dietitian. It creates an institutional record that this topic was raised, that you asked about it, and that a response was given or deferred. A question that stays in your head and never reaches the chart is invisible to the medical system. It does not exist in your longitudinal record. It cannot be built upon at your next visit. The chart note is the difference between a one-time question and an ongoing conversation. Fourth, the sentence gives the doctor a clear, low-friction path to respond. You are not asking them to prescribe a specific diet. You are not asking them to approve or reject a particular brand of ice cream. You are asking them to note that you raised the topic and to share their clinical perspective on whether the additive distinction applies at your current stage. That is a comfortable professional ask for any nephrologist. It respects their expertise while making clear that you have information you want to discuss. Now, there are 3 possible responses you might get, and each one has a path forward. The first response is the best case. Your doctor already knows the additive absorption distinction, confirms that it is clinically relevant at your stage, discusses your most recent phosphorus labs in the context of the question, and notes the conversation in your chart. You leave with a documented exchange and a clear picture of where you stand. You are done. The skill and the chart note are both in place. The second response is more common than the first. Your doctor is not specifically familiar with the brand-level detail or has not thought about the additive distinction in the context of ice cream, but is interested or willing to refer you to the renal dietitian for a more detailed discussion. That is a perfectly good outcome. The key is that you have planted the topic in the chart. The referral to the dietitian is where the specific brand-by-brand conversation happens in most nephrology practices. When you meet with the dietitian, bring the same question: additive phosphorus versus natural phosphorus. Does this distinction matter at my stage? And which brands should I be choosing or avoiding? The third response is the one people worry about. Your doctor does not engage, dismisses the question, or says dietary counseling is not their area. Here is what you do. You do not argue. You do not get frustrated in the room. You do not present a printout from the internet and ask them to read it. You say this: I understand. Would you be comfortable just noting in my chart that I asked about dietary phosphorus sources and phosphate additives, so it's part of my record? That is the fallback version of the chart documentation request. It is shorter, it is simpler, it asks for nothing more than a chart entry. A doctor who does not want to discuss the topic in clinical detail may still be willing to document that the question was raised. And once it is in your chart, it exists. It does not vanish when the appointment ends. It does not depend on your memory or the doctor's memory at the next visit. It is a permanent part of your medical record. Beyond the keystone sentence, there are specific tests and markers that are worth confirming in this same conversation. The first is your serum phosphorus level. This may already be on your standard kidney panel, but it is worth asking whether it has been checked recently and whether it has been trending up, staying stable, or has not been monitored at regular intervals. If your phosphorus has been rising, even within normal range, that trend is worth knowing. The second marker is your intact PTH, parathyroid hormone. If your phosphorus is climbing and your PTH is rising in response, that is the hormonal alarm signal described in the mechanism earlier, the system pulling calcium from your bones to manage the phosphate load. Some nephrology practices check PTH routinely starting at stage 3B. Others do not check it until stage 4 or later. Asking whether it has been checked and what the trend looks like is a reasonable and clinically appropriate question. The third is your calcium level, specifically whether your doctor is looking at calcium and phosphorus together. The calcium phosphate product is the calculation that predicts vascular calcification risk. If both numbers are rising, the combination matters more than either one alone. Your doctor may already be tracking all three. The purpose of asking is not to demand new tests. It is to confirm that these markers are being watched and to have that confirmation documented in the conversation notes. Here is what you do not do. You do not argue if the doctor disagrees with your question or your reasoning. You do not threaten to switch doctors. You do not present yourself as having found something the doctor missed, even if functionally that is what happened. You do not print a study abstract and hand it across the desk. The goal is not to win the appointment. The goal is to get the topic documented, to get a clinical perspective on your current phosphorus management, and to leave the room with a clearer picture than the one you walked in with. One more practical tool. After the appointment, before you start your car, write down what happened, the date, what you asked, what the doctor or dietitian said, and whether it was documented in the chart. Keep that note with your lab results, in a folder, in a phone note, wherever you track your health information. The next time you come in, you have a record. You are not starting from zero. You are not relying on either your memory or the doctor's memory to recall what was discussed last time. You are continuing a documented, evolving conversation, and that is how kidney care gets better over years, not just at one visit. You have the research, the mechanism, the brands, the label reading skill, and the sentence that gets it into your chart. But there is one more thing, the thing that makes this work, not just at your next appointment, but at every grocery trip and every appointment for the rest of your life. Sit back for a moment. Close your eyes if you want to. Picture this. It is 3 months from now, a Saturday afternoon. You are standing in the freezer aisle of your regular grocery store, the one you have been going to for years, the one where you know which aisle has the ice cream without looking at the signs. Your grandkid is next to you, maybe tugging your arm toward the bright cartons with the cartoon characters, maybe pressing their face against the glass door. And for the first time since your diagnosis, maybe the first time in a year, you are not standing there with a knot in your stomach. You are not avoiding the aisle. You are not calculating guilt. You are not pretending you do not want what everyone else in your family is having. You reach for a carton, you turn it around, you do not look at the calories, you do not look at the fat grams, you do not look at the marketing copy on the front. Your eyes go straight to the ingredient list. You scan for 4 letters, PHOS. They are not there. You check the potassium, negligible. You check the sodium, 40 milligrams. You check the protein, 1 gram. You know what your stage requires, and this fits. You put it in the cart. You pick up a second option, a box of frozen bars, pre-portioned, clean label, no additives, into the cart. The whole thing took 30 seconds. No anxiety, no guilt, No bargaining with yourself about whether you deserve it, just a decision based on information you did not have before today. Your grandkid looks up at you and says, "You're getting ice cream?" And you say, "I'm getting the right ice cream." That is the first future. The freezer aisle, solved. Not because someone gave you permission, because you gave yourself a skill. Now picture the second future. It is a Sunday evening. You are at dinner, maybe at your place, maybe at a restaurant near Sarasota, does not matter. Your brother is sitting across from you. He is 63. He got the stage 3A diagnosis 2 months ago, and he is doing exactly what you did, cutting out everything that sounds like dairy, reading contradictory food lists, feeling like the diagnosis took away something he cannot quite name. He has not had ice cream since May. He does not talk about it, but you can tell the way he waves off dessert menus, the way he deflects when your kids bring up the ice cream shop on the corner, and you lean across the table and say, "Let me tell you something nobody told me for 6 months. 4 letters, PHOS. That is what you look for on the ingredient list. If those letters are not there, you can probably eat it at your stage. If they are there, put it back. That is the whole thing." And you watch his face change. Not because you cured anything, not because you overrode his doctor's advice, but because you gave him back something specific, a way to stop avoiding and start choosing. You took the same confusion you lived with for months and compressed it into one sentence he can use at the store tomorrow morning. The ice cream was never the enemy. The ingredient list was the missing page. That is the second future. The moment you hand the skill to someone else. And it is the moment the skill becomes an identity, not just a technique. Here is what that identity looks like. You are not the person who avoids. You are the person who reads. You are not the person who hands over every food decision to a printout that was not detailed enough to begin with. You are the person who knows the 4 letters, knows what they mean inside the mechanism, the phosphate, the FGF23 alarm, the calcium pulled from bone, the scale lining the arteries, and knows how to match the label to your stage. You do not need to memorize a list of approved brands. You do not need to carry a reference card. You need one habit. Turn it around, read the ingredients, look for PHOS. That habit protects you at any store, any brand, any flavor, any city. And the skill is portable. It does not only work for ice cream, it works for processed cheese, it works for deli meat and canned soup and frozen dinners and dark sodas. Anything in a package, anything with an ingredient list. The same 4 letters flag the same problem in every aisle. The mechanism does not change when you walk from the freezer section to the canned goods section. The phosphate additive in a can of soup is absorbed at the same 90 to 100% as the phosphate additive in a pint of budget ice cream. One skill covers your entire grocery store. One habit protects your entire week. And neither one expires. Neither one depends on your doctor bringing it up at your next visit. The skill is yours. The habit is yours. And the identity, the person who reads, the person who knows, the person who chooses instead of avoids, that is yours too. If you are managing kidney disease and nobody has broken the diet down in a way that is actually specific to your stage, that is exactly what managing nutrition and living healthy life with kidney disease is. It is all in there, evidence-based, stage by stage. Link in the description. Subscribe so you are there when the next one comes out. Now, the 5 questions you are probably searching for right now. The first, is all ice cream bad for kidney disease? No, it is not. A half cup of vanilla ice cream made with simple ingredients, cream, milk, sugar, vanilla, no phosphate additives, contains about 70 milligrams of phosphorus at 40 to 60% absorption and about 130 milligrams of potassium. At early stage 3, with normal phosphorus and potassium labs, that half cup fits into a managed day without exceeding any clinical threshold. The issue is not ice cream as a category. The issue is which specific ice cream, and the deciding factor is whether the ingredient list contains phosphate additives that push the effective absorption from 40 or 60% to 90 or 100%. Turn the carton around, read the ingredient list, look for PHOS. That is the entire filter. The second, what about chocolate ice cream? Is it worse than vanilla for kidneys? For potassium? Yes. A half cup of chocolate ice cream contains roughly 165 to 174 milligrams of potassium, about 25 to 33% more than vanilla, because cocoa powder is a concentrated potassium source. The phosphorus difference between vanilla and chocolate is smaller, but the potassium gap is meaningful for someone whose blood potassium is elevated or trending upward. If your potassium is in normal range and your medications do not include a potassium-raising drug, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, finerenone, potassium-sparing diuretics all qualify. An occasional small serving of chocolate may fit. But if your kidney team is actively watching your potassium, vanilla and fruit-based flavors are the safer default. Ask your team where you stand before making it a regular choice. The third, can I eat ice cream every day with CKD? That depends entirely on your stage, your most recent labs, and the rest of your daily intake. At stage 3A, with normal phosphorus and potassium, a half cup of additive-free vanilla ice cream a few times a week is generally manageable within a daily phosphorus budget of 800 to 1,000 milligrams. Every day is a question for your renal dietitian because the ice cream does not exist in isolation. It has to fit alongside every other source of phosphorus and potassium you eat that day. And portion control is non-negotiable. A measured half cup, not a generous scoop and hope from the carton. At a full cup, the phosphorus doubles. At a cup and a half, which is what the research says most people actually serve themselves, you are approaching a share of your daily phosphorus budget that adds up fast. The fourth, is plant-based ice cream always better for kidneys than dairy? Not automatically. Some plant-based ice creams contain phosphate additives, dipotassium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, calcium phosphate, especially in brands that fortify their products with added minerals. Others, like Oatly's frozen dessert, have clean ingredient lists with no additives and negligible potassium. And some plant-based options carry entirely different risks. Avocado-based ice cream like Caddo can range from 50 to 200 milligrams of potassium per serving, depending on the flavor, because avocado is inherently a high potassium fruit. The rule is not dairy versus plant-based. The rule is, read the ingredient list on every product you consider, check for PHOS, and match the potassium content to your stage and your medications. This is not a prescription. Your exact limits, how much potassium, how much phosphorus, how much sodium, depend on your stage, your latest labs, and your current medications. If you take an ACE inhibitor, an ARB, or finerenone, your potassium tolerance is already reduced. Bring this information to your kidney team before you change what you are eating. The fifth, what is your angle? Why are you telling me this? Because the gap between what the research says and what a 15-minute nephrology appointment can cover is the space where phosphorus damage builds up quietly, for years, in people who are trying to do the right thing. The Kalantar-Zade paper establishing the additive absorption differential was published in 2010. The problem was confirmed in a 2025 study as still unaddressed in U.S. food labeling. Your nephrologist does not have time to walk you through a grocery aisle. The FDA does not put phosphorus on the nutrition label. This channel exists to stand in that gap, to take published, peer-reviewed research and turn it into something you can actually use at the store, at the kitchen table, and at your next appointment. No products to sell, no supplements to pitch, no membership to join. The 4 letters are free. That is the only angle. The phosphate additive problem is not unique to ice cream. It is the same mechanism, the same 4 letters, the same absorption differential, the same invisible damage, operating across your entire grocery store. 44% of the top-selling packaged foods in the United States contain phosphate additives, according to the Cleveland Research Group that surveyed over 2,000 products. The category with the highest rate was prepared frozen foods at 72%, but the additives extend far beyond the freezer aisle. Processed cheese, the individually wrapped slices, the spreadable tubs, the cheese-flavored sauces, commonly contains sodium phosphate or disodium phosphate. Deli meats and enhanced poultry are frequently injected with phosphate solutions to retain moisture and improve texture. Canned soups and packaged broths carry phosphate-based preservatives. Baking mixes and refrigerated dough use phosphate as a leavening agent. Flavored waters and dark sodas, particularly colas, contain phosphoric acid as an acidulant. In every case, the phosphorus delivered by these additives is absorbed at roughly 90 to 100%, far above the 40 to 60% your body absorbs from the natural phosphorus in whole food. The skill you built today, turn the package around, read the ingredient list, scan for 4 letters, is not a rule specific to the freezer section. It is a way of reading every label in the store through the lens of what your kidneys can and cannot clear. Every aisle, every meal, every brand. The ice cream was the lesson, the grocery store is the exam, and you do not need anyone's permission to take it. You need your labs, your stage, and the 4 letters. The honest caveat is this: reading ingredient lists does not replace clinical guidance. The skill gives you better, more specific information to bring to your kidney team. It does not give you a diagnosis or a treatment plan. Phosphorus management is one thread in a larger picture that includes potassium, sodium, protein, blood pressure, medication timing, fluid balance, and your team's assessment of your progression risk. The label reading habit does not override any of that. What it does is make you a more precise, more informed participant in the conversation. Not a substitute for your doctor, a better partner to your doctor. The next time someone asks you if you can eat ice cream with kidney disease, you will not say, "I don't think so." You will not say, "I gave it up." You will say, "It depends on 4 letters on the ingredient list, and I know what they are." That is not a small thing. For 6 months, maybe longer, you sat at that table while your grandkids ate ice cream and you poured yourself water. You did that because someone gave you a rule without giving you the reason behind it. The rule said dairy, the reason said phosphate additives. Those are not the same instruction, and the difference is the space between giving something up and choosing something better. If there is one person in your life managing kidney numbers right now, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, a parent, share this with them. Not the whole hour, just the 4 letters, PHOS. That is the whole thing. If they want the mechanism, the brands, and the appointment sentence, this video is here. The next video in this series covers how to read every label in the grocery store through the kidney lens. Not just ice cream, but every packaged food you pick up. How to spot the additives that matter, how to match the label to your stage, and how to build a shopping trip that protects your kidneys without making the grocery store feel like an exam you are failing. You are not the person who avoids anymore. You are the person who reads, and that changes everything.